All right, elementary grammar is up next, and we're on lesson 3. We're on lesson 3 in the textbook. The title of this lesson is The Sentence. So we're going to talk about rules for writing sentences. This is a lesson that's good for students of any age because whether a student is 6 years old or 16 years old, they make the same mistakes. They get the same things marked wrong, and the mistakes they make, even in high school classes, are right here in elementary grammar. So we're going to study lesson 3 on the sentence. So let's get our notes ready. Your name and date at the top of the page. The name of the course is Elementary Grammar. Elementary Grammar. And we're in lesson 3. The title or topic of this lesson is the sentence. This is a shorter class, so we're only going to have 30 minutes or so to go through this lesson. Just to review quickly, in lesson 1 of elementary grammar, we talked about objects and the senses. We talked about how there are many objects outside of our minds, and we learn about them through our senses and also by our understanding. When we learn about something through our senses, we're said to perceive those things. But anything that we know about, we are said to be conscious of. So there are many things that we are conscious of that we cannot perceive. There are many things that we know simply through our understanding that we don't perceive. And there are a number of different ways we learn about things. We talk about that in English composition class. But here in elementary grammar, we talked about the senses, about objects. We talked about what it means to perceive something and what it means to be conscious of something. And I give you this challenge question. Ready? What do you think there are more of? What do you think there are more of in our minds, in our knowledge? What are there more of? Things that we perceive or things that we're conscious of? What do you think that there are more of? Things we perceive or things we're conscious of? Yeah, because it's like this. If this is a group containing all the things we're conscious of, all the things we perceive are a part. All the things we perceive are a part of that group because everything we perceive, we are conscious of. But there are things we're conscious of that we don't perceive. You understand that? All right? Everything that we can sense, everything that we know because of our senses, we're conscious of. We know about it. But there are also other things that we know about that we can't perceive. So we are conscious of more things than we can perceive. Do you understand that? All right. In lesson 2, we talked about language. We said language is the expression of thought by means of words. Language is the expression of thought by means of words. We use language to share our ideas. Our ideas are unknown to other people. You have no idea what my ideas are. You have no idea what I'm thinking about unless I share it with you. God's given us this built-in privacy that we enjoy where we can think about things privately and secretly, and no one else can know about them unless we share them, right? Language is the expression of thought by means of words, and there are 2 kinds of language. 2 kinds of language. Think. What are the 2 kinds of language that we learned about? 2 kinds of language. Good, yes. Spoken and written, okay? So we learned about language, and we learned that there are 2 kinds of language. Spoken language and written language. What's important to understand about these is that they're not two separate things. Spoken language, our spoken words are symbols of our ideas. This is important to understand. Spoken words are symbols of our ideas. So we have ideas that exist in our mind, and we communicate these with other people by spoken words. That's how we communicate. Written words are not, so if we have written words down here, written words are not symbols of ideas. This is not right. Written words are not symbols of ideas. Written words are symbols of spoken words. So this is not true. Written words are not symbols of ideas. Written words are symbols of spoken words. And spoken words are symbols of ideas. What you write is not based on ideas in your head. What you write is based on words that you speak. Okay? What you write is not based on what's in your head. What you write is based on what you speak. Let me just put that up on the board again. We have ideas in our minds. They're private. We share our ideas through spoken words. Speech is how we share ideas. God created us to have ideas and to communicate them by spoken words. Written words are not symbols of ideas. Written words are symbols of spoken words. That's why we spell based on what we say. We write letters that are based on sounds of spoken words. You see the difference? Okay? We don't actually communicate ideas with written words. We communicate ideas with spoken words. Written words, we just are writing down spoken words. You understand that? That's why in composition class, when a kid says he doesn't know how to write, the truth is he doesn't know how to speak. Because all writing is writing down what you would say. Do you understand that? If you can't speak well, of course you can't write well, because writing is just writing your words down. And if you can't speak well, it's because you don't think well. You don't have the ideas that you need to have. But I want you to see that there are two kinds of language that are used to share ideas. Spoken words are signs of ideas. Written words are signs of spoken words. Okay? That's what we learned in Lesson 2. Lastly, in Lesson 2, we learned what grammar is. We learned that grammar treats of the principles and usages of language. Grammar treats of the principles and usages of language. And then lastly, we learned English grammar is the study of the grammar of the English language. And that was the end of Lesson 2. Lesson 3, we move on to the sentence. In Lesson 3, we move on to the sentence. We talk about this in our other classes, that when we make a sentence, in our mind, we have an idea over here, and we have an idea over here, and we have an idea over here, and these ideas are signified by words. Okay? So let's say this idea, we have an idea of, and just to use the example in our book, we have the idea of chalk. Okay? And over here we have the idea of white. Whiteness. You can close your eyes and just think about this idea of whiteness. You can think about this idea of chalk. Another idea we have is this idea of being brittle. Brittleness. That is, it's easy to break. Like a thin piece of glass is brittle. All right? So we've got these ideas in our mind. This idea of chalk. Like I said, I can tell you to close your eyes. I can tell you to close your eyes and think about chalk, and you can. I can tell you to close your eyes and think about whiteness, and you can. I can tell you to close your eyes and think about brittleness, and you can. You have these ideas in your mind. And we express these ideas with words. You can say chalk, brittle, white, and you can name these ideas. You all understand that? Now, what happens when I take a different step and I connect these two ideas? Now, instead of just having chalk over there and white over there, now I combine these ideas together and I say chalk is white. And this line is like a symbol of the word is. Right? Chalk is white. Now I've combined two ideas together. I've joined two ideas together. When I do that, I have what's called a sentence. This is called speech. Words are joined together to make speech. A sentence is an example of one kind of speech. Joining words together makes a sentence. Chalk is white. I have a sentence. Because not only am I thinking of chalk, because chalk can be different colors, not only am I thinking of chalk, but I want to communicate a more specific idea. Not just chalk, because if I say chalk, you might think about blue chalk. You might think about yellow chalk. I'm thinking about a specific kind of chalk. I'm thinking about white chalk. And so to communicate that idea, I have to join ideas together and speak a sentence. Chalk is white. That's what I want you to think about. That's called a sentence. I can also join these two ideas together. And I have another sentence. Chalk is brittle. Another sentence. Okay, so in lesson 3, we learn about the sentence. We learn about joining words together to express ideas. And what's important about a sentence is that it's words joined together that make a complete idea. It's a complete idea. Okay? Just because I join words together doesn't mean I have a sentence. I could put apple, squirrel, happy, period. Is that a sentence? No. I've joined some words together, but that's not a sentence. That doesn't express a complete idea. That's just jibber jabber, right? When you read a sentence, you can see that it expresses a complete idea. Chalk is brittle. Chalk is white. Those are sentences. Apple, squirrel, happy, that's not a sentence. That's not what it means to join ideas together. Okay? A sentence, our book tells us, a sentence is a group of words making complete sense. That means a group of words that expresses a complete idea. So that's our definition of a sentence in our book. A sentence is a group of words making complete sense. Let's get that in our notes. A sentence is a group of words A sentence is a group of words making complete sense. That's what a sentence is. If you write something and it doesn't express or it doesn't make complete sense, it's not a sentence. And many times you do that. When I say to you on your assignments in other classes, I say, make sure all of your answers are in complete sentences. Right? What I'm asking you to do is write a sentence that makes complete sense. Don't write a part of a sentence. Don't put a couple of words. Make sure you actually answer the question with a complete sentence. Express a complete idea. Okay? A sentence is a group of words making complete sense. The next part of this lesson, I don't know why they put this in this book. This makes no sense. It says, a proposition is a thought expressed in words. A proposition is a thought expressed in words. I want you to just ignore that because I have no idea why the book would say that. That's not what a proposition is. It's good to learn that a sentence is a group of words making complete sense, but that's not what a proposition is. A proposition, I'll give you a definition of a proposition. A proposition is a sentence that can be true or false. A proposition is a certain kind of sentence. A proposition is a sentence that can be true or false. Many sentences can't be true or false. Can you give me an example of a sentence that's not true, that can't be true or false? Can you think of a kind of a sentence that can never be true or false?
Theory.
Nope. It's a good guess. What's a kind of a sentence? When I tell you the answer, you're going to hit yourself because it's easy. A question, right? A question can't be true or false. If I said, is it raining outside today? You can't yell at me and say, that's false. I asked a question, right? A question can't be true or false. So I understand what you're saying, a theory, because a theory is presented as something you don't necessarily know if it's true or false, right? You're going to test it. So I understand what you're saying. But when you actually state your theory, that theory can be true or false. Your experiment's going to prove it, right? A question is an example of a sentence that can't be true or false. What's another kind of sentence that can't be true or false? Can you think of another kind of sentence? A command. If I say sit down, you can't say that's true, right? Sit down. A command can't be true or false. A question can't be true or false. A wish or a prayer can't be true or false. If I say, Isaiah, please help me, you can't say false. A prayer or a wish can't be true or false. There's only one kind of sentence. Make sure you take notes. This is one of the reasons why you can't answer the questions I ask, because you don't pay attention. There's only one kind of a sentence that can be true or false, and that's a proposition, where we assert something. We say something about a subject. This is an example. Chalk is white. That's an example of a proposition. You see what I mean? Chalk is white. That sentence can be true or false. Chalk is brittle is a proposition. It's an example of a sentence that can be true or false. What's a proposition?
Proposition is only a sentence that can be true or
Right, very simple, right? A proposition is a sentence that can be true or false. That's what a proposition is. So what our book says about proposition, just ignore that. No idea what they were trying to talk about. Maybe they were just trying to make it easy for little children. Making something wrong is not making something easy. So a sentence is a group of words that makes complete sense. A proposition is a sentence that can be true or false. And these example sentences in our lesson are propositions. They're sentences that can be true or false. Okay, so in lesson 3, we are learning the definition of a sentence and a proposition. And make sure you learn the proposition, the definition that I gave you here. The other thing that's helpful in lesson 3 is that they give us 5 rules for writing sentences, which we need to make sure we learn. And this is the kind of stuff that college students still get wrong. You have to learn these rules for sentence making, and you need to always practice them. Always follow these rules. We're going to look at them in our book here. Rule number 1. In writing sentences, follow these following directions, the textbook says. Number 1, begin each sentence with a capital letter. So rule number 1 of making sentences, begin with a capital letter. A capital letter at the beginning of a sentence is a sign. A capital letter at the beginning of a sentence is a sign to your reader that you're starting a new idea. You understand that? A capital letter at the beginning of a sentence tells your reader, I'm starting a new idea here. I'm starting a new sentence here. It's a sign for your reader, not for you. It's for your reader. Second, spell each word correctly. Spell each word correctly. Words, spoken words are symbols of ideas. Written words are symbols of spoken words. If you write the word wrong, you are not writing the right sign for that spoken word. You have to write and spell words correctly. If you don't know how to spell a word, if there's a word that you can think of, and I want you to remember what I drew before. If we have ideas, and ideas are signified by spoken words, and spoken words are shared by written words, you will always know spoken words. You will always know more spoken words than written words. You know thousands and thousands and thousands of spoken words even at your age as a young student. You know thousands of spoken words. You know many, many words that you don't know how to write. You don't know how to spell them. And that's not because you have a problem. That's normal. That's how language works. Pay attention. You will always know more spoken words than you can write. That's normal. That's not because you have a problem. All right? It's normal to know more spoken words and to know lots of words that you don't know how to write. That's normal. But when you decide that you want to write a certain word, you have to spell it correctly. When you decide that there's a spoken word that you want to write, you have to spell it correctly. Because the spelled word is the sign of the spoken word. And there are words that have the same spoken word but have different spellings. For example, This is a written symbol of one spoken word, and this is a written symbol of a different spoken word, but they're the same spoken word. They sound the same. How do I pronounce this word? Where? How do I pronounce this word? Where? They're the same, but their spelling is different. And here's another word. What's that word? Were. They're awfully close. And if you spell this word like this word, or you spell this word like this word, sometimes the people reading can figure out what you're trying to say. But it's not their job to figure out what you're trying to say. If you're writing, you're sharing your ideas. It's your job to share your ideas. It's not the reader's job. It's not a puzzle. Every time you write something, it's not a riddle for everybody to try to figure out. It's your job to share your ideas clearly. And one of the ways to do that is by spelling everything rightly. But you will always have more spoken words that you don't know how to spell. That's what the dictionary is for. A dictionary is to show you how to spell a word that you want to write. That's what a dictionary is. You can start by just look up the first few letters, and then you look through the dictionary until you find the word that you want to share, and you can see its spelling. And you have to make the effort, you have to do the work of spelling everything correctly. That's the second rule of writing sentences. Spell every word correctly. If there's a word that you want to share and you don't know how to spell it, you can think about another word that means the same thing and use that word instead. You understand that? Okay? Spell correctly. Look up words you don't know. Ask someone to help you. If you don't know how to spell a word, ask someone. Hey, Mom, how do I spell daughter? Ask someone. Look it up in a dictionary. Or, what's the other thing you can do? What's the other thing I just said you can do? Use another word, right? If you don't know how to spell a word, think of another word that means the same thing. That's okay. All right, rule number 3. So 2 rules so far. Rule number 3. Place a period at the end of every sentence that declares something or that makes a command. Place a period at the end of every sentence that declares something or makes a command. Place a period at end of every... Does it say at the end of every sentence? No, it does not say at the end of every sentence. Every sentence that declares something or expresses a command. Every sentence that declares or commands. I'm going to write here. So you make the effort to show your reader, where the sentence begins and where the sentence ends, right? How do you show the reader where the sentence begins? Capital letter. How do you show a reader where a sentence ends? A period is one way, right? We're going to learn a couple other ways. Rule number 4. Here's another way. Rule number 4. Place an interrogation point. It's also called a question mark. Place a question mark at the end of every question. So rule number 4. Place a question mark. No one calls it an interrogation point. We call it a question mark. Place a question mark at the end of a question. Place a question mark at the end of a question. And the fifth rule, never divide a syllable at the end of a line. Never divide a syllable at the end of a line. Never divide a syllable at the end of a line when you're writing or typing. Those are the 5 rules of making sentences. Now quickly here, notice that this rule number 5 does not say, never divide a word at the end of a line. Can you listen to me for a minute? It does not say never divide a word at the end of a line. It says never divide a syllable at the end of a line. So if I'm writing, let's say this is the end of my paper, and I'm writing in the begin. I'm at the end of the line. I can fit an I in there, right? But I can't fit any letters, so I write NG down here. You see what I did there? What I did was I divided a syllable at the end of the line. Never divide a syllable at the end of a line. It doesn't say never divide a word. When we get to the end of a line, if we run out of space on our paper, we write in the begin, and we stop. And we make a little dash to say that this word continues on the next line. And then we finish it. You see the difference? We can divide a word, but you should never divide a syllable. Because your writing is for who? Is it for you? The reader. And so you want to write in a way that makes it easy to read. Just look at it. Which is easier to read? This one, where you drop NG down, so the person reads beginning, right? Or beginning, which is easier to read. This one, right? That's why there's a rule for that. Don't do this. Don't divide a syllable at the end of a line. It's okay to divide a word into syllables. That's good. But don't divide a syllable because the person can't read it. So we have 5 rules for sentence making up here. Begin every sentence with a capital letter to let your reader see that you're starting a new idea. Spell every word correctly because your written words are symbols of spoken words, and the letters of the words are how we show the word. You have to spell correctly. Third, place a period at the end of every sentence that declares or commands something. It doesn't say place a period at the end of every sentence. Only certain kinds of sentences. Place a period at the end of every sentence that declares something or commands something. You should be taking notes, not playing like a 2-year-old. Fourth, place a question mark at the end of a question. Why? To help your reader read the sentence correctly. Okay? If I had this sentence, you are eating with us. It's a very different sentence if I put a period after it or a question mark. Right? If you're reading this and you say, you are eating with us, and there's no punctuation mark at the end, you don't know how to read it. What if I put this at the end? How would you read it? How would you read that sentence?
You are reading with us?
You see how you changed your expression? You're eating with us? It would show the reader that you're to read this like a question. And if that wasn't there, if all you had was a period, you would say, you are eating with us. It would be a command, right? You are, or it would be a declaration. It would be a proposition. You are eating with us. If I looked and I saw a person eating with me, I could say, you are eating with us. And he'd say, no duh, right? That would be a declaration. It could be a command or it could be a question. You're eating with us? We would read it differently. Question mark shows the reader how to read it. And lastly, never divide a syllable. Never divide a syllable at the end of a line. You can divide a word at the end of a line, like this, but never divide a syllable at the end of a line. Okay? Those are the 5 rules for writing sentences. Now, obviously, there are many more rules for writing sentences. These are 5 rules for elementary grammar that you should focus on. And like I said, there are many high school students who get these rules wrong. They don't spell words correctly. They don't write complete sentences. They don't use punctuation. Okay? So let's make sure we pay attention to these basic rules and make sure we never get these things wrong, because this is just elementary grammar. This should be easy stuff. So 5 rules for writing. Make sure you know the 5 rules. That's all for lesson 3 here in elementary grammar. Take some time, write a summary in your notes, write a summary of what we studied in this class. These summaries are helpful because if you're looking through your notes later and you don't remember what a certain class was about, that summary at the end of your notes should give you a good, clear idea of what that class was about and should remind you and help you to remember that class. Okay, so that's all for lesson 3 of elementary grammar.